You're on.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Indeed, we can.
All right. Thank you very much. At least that works. It's the first start of the day. All right. So, how are we all today? So, today we're going to talk about the changes in working with crystalline silica substances that have been occurring rapidly since last year, in the last year. We're also going to have some guest speakers in from MQuash. Did we get it right, Shelley? So, Shelley's going to go through with a little bit of a presentation at the end, how they can help you as well. All right. There's a bit of a lag with this. Hopefully the slides and me don't out of whack. I'll slow it down. So we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands in which we meet today and pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging. A little bit of background. This presentation and awareness session has been provided with funding from ACCI, from the, it's supported by South Australian Business Chamber, and the Australian Government Department of Employment and Workplace Relations. So they put the money in to allow other organisations to improve and understand the changes that the legislation has put in place, which we all know when we have changes in legislation, it's not the easiest thing to understand. Right. Today we're going to go over what is crystalline silica substances, what it means to you, what are the changes in regulations, what is considered a high-risk silica process or crystalline silica process, which is what are the big changes in the legislation, how they defined it. We're going to talk about the different types of crystalline silica, what is different types of silica, whether it's amorphous or crystalline, and how they affect you and the effects on your body. What are the health effects? What are crystalline silica substances? It is a new word you'll find in the legislation, the changes. It's referred to as CSS, it's easier, but crystalline silica substance is what you need to determine at the moment. What is high-risk processing? What it means to you, how do you determine a high-risk processing? So that's going to be the guts of it after we go over an overview of what crystalline silica is and how you as a business and organisation can move forward to make sure your workers are protected and you're doing the right things to meet the legislative requirements. And we're going to go through the legislative requirements as well. At the end of it, there'll be, when I finish my part, Shelley from MQuash is going to come and have a chat about what they can do to support you going forward in South Australia. And there'll be questions. If you have any questions, put it in the chat. Cindy will collate them all together. Hopefully I can answer some of them. If there's any in the room, I can answer them at the end of it. But we'll put them together and then we can send them all out. You'll get a copy of the presentation, and the presentation, I'm aware, is been recorded, so that way you can go back and review it at any time you want. There will be other paperwork which we can use to help to make sense of some of the regulatory changes when we get to the flow charts and how they work it out, which ACCI have put together, which is provided to all the different organisations nationally. So it's a national approach, which is good. And we'll be forwarding that on to you to make your life a little easier. Yep, I think that's about it. And also right at the end, I've been asked to pass on, Cindy said that there's going to be a QR code for you to provide, to undertake a little survey monkey to see if there's anything you want to go in the future, and if you missed out, anything you want to have a look at. Please take a screenshot of it and we'll go from there. All right, so we've all heard of crystalline silica, we've all heard of silica, we know that it's in the media all the time. What is it? How's it going to affect me? So what is silica? There are different types. We have amorphous silica, which we usually think about when we have sand and glass. Amorphous silica is also in toothpaste, paints, plastics as well. So we find this type of silica. This amorphous silica is not the one that causes health effects generally. You can convert it and change it where it may start to cause irritation or long-term high exposure is good. But generally we find when we're walking on a beach, we don't have health effects from interacting with sand or glass. The different structure between amorphous silica and crystalline silica, it's the same molecule, but the crystalline silica generally is tighter bonded. It's a nice little neat bonds like you see on the screen there. So your silicon dioxide and extra oxygen molecules put together to make it nice and structured. It's when this crystalline silica is ground up, crushed, broken, fractured, is when it gets into your, and if it's a small enough particle, when it gets into the bottom parts of your lungs, it becomes an issue. So it's the fracturing of the crystalline form of silica. Where do we find crystalline silica? It's in quartz, it's in opals, and it's naturally, so we find it in everywhere. So seeing it, touching it's fine, it's just beating it up grinding it up, pulverizing it to get the fine dust out is where it becomes a concern. Man-made bricks, concrete, pavers, tiles, all those sorts of general products that you'll be working in and out with in your workplaces is where we find it, with different proponents and different concentrations of crystalline silica substances in there. Clays can have the fine crystalline silica, but it depends. It could be a trace amounts up to 50%. It depends on what sort of clay you have. So it's a bit of an oddity clay. Yes, it is, and no, it's not. So just need to be aware of that one. All right. So what is RCS? You probably all would have heard the term RCS. You need to go out there and do monitoring for RCS. We need to make sure that our workers are protected from RCS. RCS is the respirable or the very, very small fraction of the crystalline structure when we break it up. So as I said, we have man-made crystalline substances, quartz is generally where we find it. We have rocks, road-based, your blue metal. You also have in the man-made the concrete, the limestone, depending on where it is. You may have some of there. You also have other products that, it's the fine stuff. What is fine? What is an issue with the dust? So if I'm thinking about concrete cutting, generating dust, I have no controls on whatsoever in place, and I've got large levels of dust. There's multiple different size fractions in there. Some are irritant, the large particles, which are usually 30 to 100 microns. On the picture, you've got table salt of 100 microns, so that's the stuff we can see. That's the stuff that's large. It's not going to cause any ongoing health effects. It's an irritant. The large particles and stuff we can see get stuck in our nasal passages, our throat. We have the ability to excrete that out by blowing our nose, coughing it out. It's going to get attached to our mucus. The hairs in our nose are going to allow it to pass out. It's going to be trapped. We're going to get rid of it. Not really an issue. More of an irritation, or if you're asthmatic, it can cause a bit of an irritation, more for asthmatics. Then you have the thoracic fraction. You can still see this dust. It's usually 30 micron and up, up to 30 micron. And this stuff gets a little bit lower in your lungs, so it gets into the upper airway. Our body's designed well. In that upper airway, we have little cilia hair cells. Think of an escalator. As the particles come down, these are particles we still can see as well. It gets trapped. Our body allows it to move up with the hair cells to allow you to cough it out, expel it out. Generally, we get rid of most of the thoracic fraction. Then we have the fine, very fine particles, which are the respirable one, which is the ones we care about, the ones that cause the health effects. These are the ones sub 10 micron, usually around 2 microns, generally where the really fine stuff is. It gets trapped in our lungs. It goes all the way to the lower part of our lungs, usually setting the alveoli. If we remember grade 8 science, our lungs are designed with little sacs down the bottom, allows oxygen to transfer into the body and transfer back out with carbon dioxide, so it allows us to breathe and provide our body with oxygen. These small respirable fractions of crystalline silica get trapped in there. Our body doesn't have hair in these little alveoli sacs. So what we do is we use our white blood cells, they attack them, they attach to them, and they try and take them out. And generally our body is pretty well designed. It can allow this to move out, and we can cough some of it out. But when you're exposed to large amounts, long periods of times, the body can only handle so much. So therefore you have these white blood cells which are helping us. They'll start to conglomerate and they'll start to stay there. They'll start to cause scarring on your alveoli. And that's when you don't get the oxygen transfer through. And from then, how much exposure to have to this. And it's not I went outside and I walked past a cloud of concrete cutting and I've now got silicosis sort of thing. It's the long-term exposure to high levels. When it builds up, not allowing the oxygen passage to go through. So therefore, we can't breathe as well. We get silicosis, lung cancer, and there's also secondary cancers arising from kidney cancer for long term as well. So we do have other health effects. But this is generally where we break up our dust. So we have the large particles we see, the small particles we don't. As a note, decide that if you're doing the concrete work, for example, I'll pick on concrete cutting for the course of this. It's easy. We've probably all seen it and done it in the industry, whether it's an electrician drilling a hole through a wall to run some cabling. It's generally they drill the hole, a bit of dust, and away they go. Now they should be using on-tool extraction, hopefully, and capturing those dust. It's if I generate the dust, oh yeah, I've got my PPE on, I've generated, I walk away, I'm not coming back to that, it was a few cuts. that fine particles of dust can stay suspended in air if there's not enough air movement for up to 3 days. And that's other people coming through, other tradies that are not part of your work, they're not protecting themselves, then they're now being exposed. So it's not just about the work you're doing, it's also about the others in the area or following you after if you're not using the right controls. All right, so let's talk about the health risks. So, as I said, RCS, or respirable crystalline silica, to make it easy going forward, I'm just going to refer to RCS. It's when we breathe in those fine particles and they get into our lungs. So as you can see on the screen here, this is a person who has complicated silicosis. A normal chest x-ray would have clear definition of your ribs, of your spine, your heart. You wouldn't have these hazy little white dots everywhere. These hazy white dots, as you see on the screen, is where the respirable crystalline silica has been attacked by the white blood cells. It's now causing scarring, which now allows less oxygen diffusion across your body. So this is complicated. It's not good. They're still getting airflow, but this person's going to struggle breathing going forward. We don't want to get to this. As I said, there's other forms, as in lung cancer. There is autoimmune disease, chronic kidney disease, and some autoimmune diseases include scleroderma and lupus. So the bloating of the fingers is a good indication that you've been exposed to high levels of RCS over a period of time. Hopefully you haven't got silicosis as well, but depends on the body, depends on what you get. It also has been noted that RCS can be irritating to the eyes. As you'd expect, large particles, small particles, it's sharp, it's fine, it's going to cause issues with other parts of your body as well. So it's just not the lungs. All right, so that's a bit of an overview of what RCS, to either give you a refresher or give you some new information about why we care about RCS. It causes health effects. It's not for our body, and we need to make sure that we're managing it. So there's been a lot of work done by the organisations and legislators around the country, the regulators, trying to come up with a national approach to how we're going to manage this. It's great. So we want to determine what is a crystalline silica substance. This is a new phrase which you'll find in the codes of practices, the legislation and how it's referred to. So as a business and organisation, you need to work out what a crystalline silica substance is. And in the regulations 529A, it tells you what is a crystalline silica substance, what the process could be to generate a crystalline silica substance, and what sort of controls you need to put in, which is in Part B. But we're going to go through that now to find out what you need to do. So this is the main point of the changes in legislation now, how it affects you as a business, what you need to do going forward. For crystalline silica substance, the regulators have defined that anything that's more than 1% weight by weight in your original product is considered a crystalline silica substance. It's the stuff. If you don't know what it is, there's ways to find out. You can ask your manufacturer, does this have more than 1%? You can ask your supplier, and they should be able to give you this information. If they don't, Google it, use the internet. There's lots of information out there that someone will have. Oh, yes, this product A will contain 20% crystalline silica substance. It is more than 1%. Now we've got to do an assessment on it, how we manage it. If that doesn't work, phone a friend always works well, because people in industry. What it doesn't mean is that if I'm working with a product, for example, let's pick limestone, where it mostly doesn't have more than 1%. There are some areas that do. We had a chat about this before, but there are some areas that do have it. So it's a product that doesn't have more than 1%, for example. I cannot say, let's do a whole heap of air monitoring in the workplace, because they're using it, milling it, processing it, and they're putting it all together, and now we're seeing exposures. It's what it is an inherent product, not what you generate by disturbing it, crushing it, grinding it. It's what it is originally. So if it's less than 1%, you do not need to abide with everything in the legislation. You need to make sure your controls are proper, so therefore you're not exposing your workers to the product, but you don't have to go through the whole risk approach. There are less controls of doing monitoring, of doing health checks, but as a business, you should be looking at protecting your workers as PCBU. So that is one. It's got to be more than 1%. Engineered stone, we know we don't install it, manufacture it, have it imported into Australia. So that is 98, 99%. So that's great. However, what I'm hearing is being forgotten is that we've got lots of engineered stone in the workplaces. What happens if it gets a crack or it needs to be fixed or repaired? Workers still need to abide by the right controls. So yes, they can fix and repair it, but they can't just go willy-nilly. So yes, we've removed engineered stone installation, but there will be times where you need to get the right person in to do the work to make sure they're protected. Again, this is the high concentrations of pure crystalline silica. We want to ensure that the controls in there are to the extreme to make sure that you're not generating exposure to your workers and to the public that are in that area, if it's a house, for example. There are different tests also you can get done to determine what a crystalline silica substance is. There are 4 main types. There's alpha quartz, which you generally find in all crystalline silica substances. There is cristobalite, which you'll find in some of the quarrying and road bases as well. You should test for both. There's tridymite and tripoli. In Australia, we can't really analyse for those at the moment. I've been working with a few companies and groups that are trying to analyse it. So hopefully this year they'll have a way to analyse it. But getting these things determined in the lab does cost lots of money. So if it's easy to find from the manufacturer regulator, Google it, what it is, finding a friend, you're going to save yourself time and money down the track. If you can't, then you need to either test it and analyse it, or assume it's got more than 1% and move on and say, yes, it's going to cost me $5,000 to determine this. Let's just say it's more than 1%. Let's just move on and let's put our controls in place. That all comes down to how much I have to invest in the controls compared to, do I want to work out, is it less and do I need to invest at that level of controls in? That's up to you as a business. All right. So yes, as a note, if you're doing your monitoring, for your air monitoring, should always get them to do both alpha quartz and cristobalite, because sometimes you'll find a little bit of it. It's very vague. If you have one, you're reporting on one or the other. Holistically, you should add them together and say, this is my total concentration, because they're both a healthy risk RCS. So they risk a house. So you can't just say, oh, look, I've got a little bit of cristobalite, I've got a little bit of alpha quartz. Alpha quartz is below the standard. But if I add the cristobalite to it, oh, I'm above it now, I've had an exceedance, I need to do something. You should add them together because that's going to give you a total holistic approach to your health. All right. So where do we see crystalline silica substances? Want to come up? So we see it naturally in sandstone, rocks, bricks, well, bricks are man-made, granite, natural stone. We find in all these natural products. It's a naturally occurring product. We make it and generate it in cement, or cement we mine. Concrete. Concrete is great because it has cement, it has road ballast and rocks, it has, depending on what your limestone is, it has some in there. So you have lots in there, but it doesn't mean you've got a high level. It could be 20 to 40%. And that's generally out there. All these different sorts of crystalline silica substances. Safe Work Australia have made a list. Most of the regulators have a list of what it is. I know ACT, where I'm from, has a lovely list of different products which contain it. You can use that to determine what content it is. Clay, I did mention earlier, clay is a weird one. It can have trace amounts or it can have up to 50%. Depending on your process, you may want to do the investigation to find out what your percentage of CSS is. And to make it easy, I'm just going to refer to crystalline silica substances, CSS, going forward. All right. Right. So now we've gone through the health, we've gone through where we find our crystalline silica substances. Let's go through what the regulatory changes are in the business. So Safe Work Australia at the end of 24 came up with the new national guidance working with crystalline silica substances. It's available out there. I find reading these regulatory information, it's not always the simplest words and simplest processes. So We did some work with ACCI and put together, and the regulators around the country, and put together, taking this information and making it into a simpler flow chart. So what is high, what is CSS, what is medium, what is a low risk, which I'm going to give, which Cindy should have access to. If not, ACCI will pass it on. And you can use that in your businesses. It's just going to make it easier. There's a few different versions to make it easy to understand what is a CSS, what I need to do if I've got to high risk, low risk, or medium risk. Right. So with the new changes, as I said, you need to work out the content, and then you need to find out, yes, I know I've got more than 1%. What does this mean? I need to work out if I am processing a CSS as defined by the regulations. So what does a processing mean? That's what we're going to go over now to try and help make it a little bit easier. So okay, so this is hopefully determine what they've said in the legislation. Processing, you've got to determine what your process is. There's 6 different things listed. The first one is if you're using any power tool, mechanical device, jackhammer, grinder, if you're grinding up concrete, if you're using a rock crusher that is processing with mechanical equipment. Are you using a abrasive polishing with a Dremel? That can also be considered as a mechanical process. It's not just the big things, it can be the small things as well. That's only if you have a CSS above 1%. So yes, if you got those, I'm polishing metal. Some of the metal polishes have more than 1%, so therefore it's a CSS process. Doesn't look like the clicker wants to work now. Other ones include excavating using a road header, quarrying, picture of a road header, quarrying, whether you're blasting, digging it out, smashing it out. A quarry is going to have lots of crystalline silica substance. It is a process. You need to ensure you have the right controls in, and you have done the risk assessment, which is what they want to see. Mechanical screening. So your size fraction. So this could be maybe where they're thinking with yours, where you have, if you've got a different rocks or ore bodies and you're putting in there your size fraction it to get smaller and larger particles, for that could be one there. Tunneling doesn't want that work. Example, I do apologize. So that was the size fraction. We go to some small quarries that, yes, we're digging it up. We've got that. Oh, we've got another part where we have a look after. The size fractions, we want larger rocks for different sorts of roadways, smaller ones for asphalt plants. That is still a process. If you're doing any of these, you've got to start doing your risk assessment. Tunneling is quite easy. Is there any tunneling in South Australia?
Yeah.
It's about to be.
Pretty soon, close.
Oh, well, there you go. That's going to be a world of fun, especially when they bolt the tunnel up to do in New South Wales. And the other one, which Sally mentioned, which is yours, is any other process that a CSS can expose you to or expect to expose someone or to RCS. So it could be as simple as old mate on the sweeper that's cleaning up inside the construction business at the end of it. They're not using a broom. Great. Or brooms should be banned, in my opinion, in a construction site, because it's just aerosolizing those fine particles, and it's going to stay suspended for days in the air. That's capturing. That is still a CSS process. Changing out the vacuums. So you're doing all the right things. You've got your on-field extraction. You've got your H-class extraction. You vacuum. Fantastic. When you're removing those bags and disposing of that, it's also considered a process underneath the new legislation. So disposing of your waste, whether it's dry, whether it's a slurry where it's mixed with a bit of water or a lot of water, because the slurry will dry out. What's your process there? So the bottom one is the capture all for all the things that they couldn't really define. Yes, Andy.
I have a question. Is there any requirements for disposing of like vacuum bags and waste containing silica or silica? So is that just general waste, general construction waste, or does it need to be bagged or anything like that?
So it's a good question, because this was raised in ACT, where a whole industry was shut down because they weren't taking the bagged up waste. They had big bulker bags, they had small bags, and said, we're not taking it because it's silica. If I take those out and double bag it like you would asbestos, it's construction waste. This is going to be buried. It's not going to cause a risk. It's going to go underneath the ground covered. It's just that when the changes started to happen, a lot of confusion was out there, and businesses that were taking waste were saying, nope, not taking it all. They did a bit of a chat through about it and said, okay, we understand that the risk as it's contained is not there. If I was to open that bag and just tip it out, we'll have a skip that's just full of all my waste. That's different, but bagged up, just construction waste. Yeah, and I wouldn't take a skip that's open and just dip it as construction waste. It is, but then you're going to aerosolize and have a health risk. Check with your local areas, but I know ACT went through it, and New South Wales and the surrounding area had the same question, but it's bagged, it's just construction waste. But it's the removal of that. Make sure you've got the right controls in place. So this might be where you go to the lowest common denominator and use PPE to make sure it's bagged up for the person who replaces the bag. Oh, okay, that works. Yeah. So we need to determine what's a process. We've determined it's a process. Now we need to work out what sort of controls we have in place. So in the regulations 529A is what is the risk? What is the health risk? What is the process? Is it a CSS? Is it more than 1%? Part B determines our controls and what we need to have as a minimum level of controls. So you don't need everything because everything is not practical. Using wet, onto wet dust suppression for high voltage cable drilling through is probably not the best thing. You may need to go to onto capturing and other controls in place, segregating the workers. So you need to look at it. So the legislation lists that isolating a person from dust exposure. Maybe not the person doing the work. If you do it robotically or remotely, fantastic. Generally not going to happen if you're building a structure. You need to run cabling or holes through. You've got to have someone physically doing the work. But do I need the rest of the people in there doing the same work at the same time? Can I, schedule it that higher risk process is done by one group, and when they're finished, the other ones can come through and then interact in the space, so therefore they can do their work and then don't need to abide by the same requirements under the legislation. Am I working underground or am I working in a quarry? Do I have my operator cabin fitted with a HEPA filtration or one of the positive pressure cabin modules, which you're seeing more and more? I see a lot of it in mining. I have seen a few in construction, which are great. Also in quarrying. So it stops the dust getting in. Fantastic. Am I using wet suppression or on-tool suppression? Local exhaust ventilation? Am I using those sorts of tools? You need to also think about, do I still need to use PPE? Do I still need to think about it? If you still think there's a risk that someone has been exposed to from the above, you may need to add the PPE or RP, respiratory protection of equipment, RPD, protection device. If you're wearing one of these, again, ensure the person who's wearing it is fit tested. If they've got a lovely beard, then they have positive pressure RPD, because you want to ensure that, yes, putting a mask on is actually going to be protective and effective. You don't want to say, I'll put a mask on, I've got a beard, so if someone from ZZ Top, and you must say, I've just put my hand over my mouth and I'm covering nothing. So it's not going to work. But that legislation clearly defines these are some of the controls you need to put in place. Not all of them, at least one, or if they don't work, you need to add some extras. All right, so now we've had a look. We've seen what our product is. We know it's more than 1%. We've defined it is a processing, for your works business. They defined it as a processing task. Now we need to determine what is high risk. So the legislation is all about high risk. The stuff you'll get from ACCI that it can provide has medium and low risk, which has some different controls, which helps you with your level of ongoing monitoring, ongoing health assessments, and those sort of things as well. So it's not just about high risk. So what is a high risk? We've determined it. Now, as you can see here, a lot of this, if you're reading it, really doesn't help trying to read it through. So let's go through to make sure we can understand what a high risk is. They do list in the legislation 7 different types of high risk processing tasks, which you need to record. So you need to make the decision, yes, it's high risk, collect all the information, and how you collect the information and what you need to gather as information. To help with that, you'll see a bit later, there is a recording sheet there as a template you can use or not use, entirely up to you. I've left a couple on your desk there, the ones in here, that show you how to gather information and what you should be putting down. This checklist is what you use when you're doing your risk assessment. Ensuring you have the right people doing your risk assessment, whether it's the safety person, chatting with the workers because they know what they do. We've all been in the business that said, yep, we know what we do, the bosses know what we do, but the workers do it differently because it doesn't quite work the way that the bosses thought it was. Having someone engaged as part of that risk assessment initially, or getting an occupational hygienist on site to also help as well, or reaching out to the industry. So we need to work out the types of taken, the forms, the different, we're going to go through 7 in a minute. What you cannot use in it is admin controls. Admin controls are not to be used to say, yes, I cannot make my decision because I'm going to isolate the person only, or I'm going to give them PPE and I don't need to worry about anything else. So you should be able to use those controls. Yes, they are valid. Isolation, training, awareness, also health monitoring or PPE, but that doesn't take your requirement away to do the process, step it through. Which was a bit of confusion at the start. Oh, I'm isolating, I've got PPE, it's all good. It's not really how it works. So how do we collect this information? So we need to, as I said earlier, chat to the manufacturer, the supplier, Google it, product information. You can use safety data sheets, be aware of safety data sheets. A lot of stuff is proprietary, so they don't really list it very well. They might have a cover-all hazardous substances and it's 40%. How much of that is RCS? Don't know. A good starting point, but reach out, phone a friend, phone someone else in the industry. You might even be able to phone Helmquist. I'm sure that they may have some information. Shelley will correct me wrong if I'm wrong later.
Quarries have their petrographic analysis.
Yeah, petrographic analysis is great. Yeah, don't go and do it for yours. If yours are quarried in the same area, generally the morphology and the geology of that stuff is going to be similar. You're not going to split hairs over 1 or 2%. If your petrograph comes back and says you've got 0.3% of silica in your process, limestone, and it's really low, great. It's still probably going to be similar. But you know, if you're doing quartz and you're mining it for, it's going to have lots and lots of, it's a high percentage. If you're doing for cement, for the concrete, you're going to have high levels in there. So don't split hairs over it. Use someone else's petrograph. But I wouldn't use a petrograph with someone tried recently. Oh, we've got a place in Northern Territory. Is it the same as our stuff down the south coast of New South Wales? No, because South Coast of New South Wales is a long, long way away. They thought they were going to try and save money and time, but the morphology of the rocks is completely different. Plus down there, they've got naturally occurring asbestos in their rock layers too. So, well, they didn't have in the Northern Territory. So you've got to do it. The petrograph tests are a little cheaper than the other tests to determine. So that's hopefully not a bad thing. So the lab testing, and as I said, someone else in the industry, they're there to help. You need to then, if it's manufacture artificial products, hopefully you're not doing much work with those nowadays. It's only the repair works that's going. It's an engineered stone, Caesar stone, sintered stone. It's all going to have 98%, 95 to 98% RCS in it. There are products overseas which are less, 40% RCS in it, and they're getting some that are lower. But Australia's banned the importation of all engineered stone, so be aware of that. You can't go something that's lower. Also, what are you doing in your business? As another side note, we were chatting to a team that were doing a process, and what they were doing, they're actually generating their own engineered stone as a byproduct, and they didn't realise it. So we're not allowed to make engineered stone in Australia. The process wasn't a typical engineered stone you'd use for your bench tops. It was completely different. Just the waste product was exactly as a definition of engineered stone. So they had to work out exemptions for that and different controls because they weren't cutting right in the end. It was just a byproduct. So be aware. As I said, trade, ask the supplier. You also need to work out what the type of work is. This is where you go back to the guys on the field or the the team out there. What are you doing? How are you doing it? What is the frequency of doing this work? Who's doing it? Are you doing it once a year? Are you doing it for 10 hours a day, 5 days a week? Yes, we're doing concrete cutting. We're doing jackhammering, picture on the screen, every day for the next 3 months. We've got teams out there. Have you got any on-till extraction? What does that look like? Never seen it. You can get on-till extraction for jackhammering. Can I use wet processes instead? So what are you doing? How long? And how long is the duration between it? So gather all this information. It might seem like a lot, but these are simple, easy questions you can ask and you get information pretty quickly. Types of power tools you're using, how fast do they process? There's a big difference between having a high-speed drill into a wall, high cutting speed. The higher the cutting speed, the more it's going to break up the structure, the more you're going to splinter the crystalline silica and generate the high levels of RCS. Lower speed, it's going to be the larger particles, so you're going to generate lower amounts of RCS. Do you have on-till extraction? Don't know if that one does. Yeah, it does. On-till extraction. Is it been retrofitted? So we have drills out there, we want to keep them. How are we using a shroud as a retrofit? So the older stuff don't come fitted with them. You can't add it to it, so you have to buy something different. If you're going to use on-till extraction or retrofitted one, make sure it's attached to a H-class vacuum and not your vacuum that you use at home, because it's just going to push the air straight in and straight out the back. It's going to capture the large particles, it's not going to capture the small RCS. Yeah. So these are the information you capture. And then, have you done any air monitoring? What does that look like? This forms the basis of your risk assessment. Or is it personal monitoring? Is it static monitoring? Static monitoring is usually our control or boundary monitoring. Can't compare it to the Australian standard or the workplace exposure standard, which will be soon the workplace exposure limit in a year or so. So this is our maximum limit, which would be better. But you can use it as, yes, I'm doing a process, I'm doing this construction of this building. We have concerns about our neighbours, we're generating dust, and we've tested and we found out it's only large and inhalable fractions, there's no RCS in there. There's our wetting down, our misting, our on-till extraction, our wet process are capturing it. You can still use that information to say what we're doing is controlling it, so therefore we might be able to bring our level of risk down, go from a high to a medium or maybe even a low. But saying that, it needs to be for the same process. I can't do a risk assessment for my electricians doing wall chasing, drilling holes, as for the guys out there, jackhammers, fixing up the floor, or for my plumbers or for my tilers. It needs to be done for the task and purpose and the job, not just a holistic approach. Foring is easy. It's going to dig it up, it's going to generate loader dust. It's not going to matter whether it's the guy inside the loader, the excavator, or whatever it is. You could make that a high level one. Construction is a little bit harder because you have lots of trades and workers and environments in there. You can also use, have you had any injuries, illnesses, incidents on sites, any workers' compensation? This information can be put down. Oh yes, we've had 20 incidents over the last 10 years. They were minor. We've had them go, they've been they've assessed by a doctor. We've had the health checks and we've found nothing. So that's also good information. So put that information down. As I said earlier, we have a template designed up which hopefully makes it easier to capture this information, which I'm going to show now, which will be provided. It just goes through who's doing, which you should do for any risk assessment. This is not a risk assessment session, but it's just to give you an idea. Who's doing it, the product, the types of silica present, alpha quartz or cristobalite, and hopefully down the track, the other two, tridymite and tripoli, they are a contaminant, so they're similar to it. They're still considered a respirable crystalline silica substance, but it's usually very, very low effects, and you don't find those other two in isolation, so that's why they're not spending a lot of time and money and effort on it. What the content was, what the process is, where it is it indoors, is it outdoors? Am I blasting a wall so nobody's in the vicinity of it? So I'm not really putting my workers to it. I don't go back to that blasting for 2 days, so the dust is settled, whatever it may be. So put those in there. How long do we do the task for? I drill 3 holes through a wall once every 6 months. My frequency, my exposure, yes, it's still a more than 1% crystalline silica substance. It meets that definition. It is a process, but my frequency duration for that task may be able to make it, say, a low or medium, because I have onto wet extraction. I also have training to my workers. They've done silica awareness training. They've got PPE. It's low risk because I only do it a few times a year. So you can make that decision. How many is exposed to it? What sort of equipment you have for your controls. You're listing all this stuff out to make it easier going forward. Air monitoring, as I said, health records, compensations, put it all down. Any air monitoring, is it above 0.5? Be aware that if you do have any exceedances above the 0.05 in your workplace monitoring, that you need to report it to your regulators, Safe Work, Work Safe, yeah.
Safe work.
Safe Work here, Work Safe in ACT, Safe Work something, and you say, oh, it's all confusing, but your regulators.
Safety comes before work.
It should. So you need to report it within 14 days. I do not know if they come back with a big stick or if it means they come out and investigate, but you need to report it. That is an answer I don't have. So we've gathered all this information. Now we're determined to determine where do we go from here. So again, using the regulations 529B, we're going to put this stuff together and we're going to say, yes, what do I need to do? We've determined it's high risk. I need to immediately do something. So I need to ensure that I'm minimizing my exposure to my workers. I need to ensure that I have a combination of these controls in place. I may also need to ensure that the PPE they're using is correct. Oh, yes, they're using we run out of dust masks, they're using a COVID mask. That's not very protective at all. I have disposable dust masks and I'm doing concrete cutting all day. That's not going to give you a lot of protection. You have to have the right PPE for the right task. I need to conduct air monitoring to determine if I have exposure to my workers and if I'm exceeding the workplace exposure standard. I need to organise health monitoring. So all businesses that are defined as working with a 1% or more crystalline silica substance and it's high risk, require you to do baseline monitoring. If you haven't done baseline monitoring, you'll need to go and do monitoring of the worker. That usually involves a lung function test where you blow in the tube to see what your lung volume's like. It may include a chest x-ray. It'll also include a discussion about what sort of jobs you've done in the past so that they get that picture. From then, you may need to be required to do ongoing health monitoring every year, 2 years, or if it's low risk, you could push it out to maybe an exit one when they leave the company. Air monitoring, again, depending on your levels, require how often you need to do air monitoring and how much air monitoring you do. Doing the hygienist in me saying doing air monitoring on one person once a year is going to determine if I have a risk. No, I need to understand my process. I need to do more. It's not me trying to do extra work so we can run as a business. It's a requirement for you to understand that each time you do air monitoring on someone, it's a 1 point in place, in time, every day can be different. So you need to randomize that over a period of a year. For example, Safe Work, we'll come back and say, I want to see a minimum of 6 for these tasks, for your concreters over the course of the year. You don't have to do them all at once, spread it out. Yep. So what else? Something else. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to hand over to Shelley. Shelley's going to give you a little information on what she can do for you.
Hi, my name's Shelley Rowett. Thank you, Marcus. I'm just going to give you a little bit of South Australianising of the information that was provided. So under the South Australian Work Health and Safety Act, I'm going to lose my voice now. We have a separate schedule, which is about our old Silicosis fund, which is now spent by the Mining, Quarrying Health and Safety Committee, which recently moved into Return to Work SA. So we were under the Attorney General's Department up until December last year, and now we're under Return to Work SA. In that part of the Act, the committee, which is a committee of the Industrial Relations Minister, has funds to promote, support practices and procedures designed to protect workers from silicosis. So all the stuff that Marcus has talked about today with doing your air monitoring, doing your health monitoring, Macquarie has a strategic plan on its website to help with that. So there is a fund to help businesses in the high risk category. So the medium and low risk or big end of town, generally we believe can look after themselves, but the South Australian government is prepared to help the medium and small businesses with the sorts of things that you've been advised that you need to do. And part of the reason for that is South Australia, as Marcus said, isn't on its own. We have a national plan for and national actions for supporting silicosis reduction across the country. And that plan has 5 priorities, and a couple of those aims Macquarie has been working on for some time. Obviously, the education aspect of silicosis, you know, we've been out there talking about to mines and quarries and high-risk industry for about 30 years now. And our awareness campaign and information is all on our website. It's weird, isn't it? It goes one ahead without you. So the other thing we've been working on hard for the last 18 months is the health screening of workers, and that is number 3 in the national priorities. So if you're struggling to find a doctor to do your lung health screening on workers that have been exposed for 5 years or more, you can contact Macquarie and we will book that screening in for you if you meet our criteria, which again is on our website. We have been supporting mining quarry industry and doing their occupational hygiene exposure monitoring as well. But if people wanted general results, as we talked about, from doing the same sort of work at a quarry site, we have lots of reports that can give you an idea that you will generally, unless you're very low silica on the limestone coast, you're going to be high risk. So that risk assessment for you is kind of already done. What you then need to do is get your risk control plan and your health monitoring in place, and we have services to help you with that. It's going to move on anyway. So for the lung screening that we provide, that's our eligibility criteria. There's a booking form on our website. It will involve for South Australia a low dose chest CT, which we put the workers through. We do a pre-screening interview of all the jobs they've done over their working life. There's a lung function test, which includes gas exchange of the lungs. We provide a doctor's consultation with a thoracic specialist, not just a respiratory physician. And the results of any non-work related issues found go to the worker's GP. And then if there is an issue found that may need managing, because we're in return to work, we will help that employee put through a claim for compensation, maybe be retrained into another industry if that's what's required. So the change in focus, I guess, for Macquarie from just screening people and leaving it is now to be a full end-to-end service to support workers who might have disease. And we are finding workers with disease out in most of the high-risk construction industries that have been detailed in Marcus's presentation, also in industries where we haven't really expected to find them. So silicosis is out there, unfortunately, lung disease is out there. Yes, do your prevention for the things that you're doing now, but for the issues that you haven't controlled in previous years, there might be legacy disease, and we want to make sure we've got a handle of that, that the workers are preferably moved into other tasks before they develop full-blown silicosis. So that's what we're offering at the moment. As far as what the state's doing, Macquarie isn't the only Occupational Health and Safety Committee working on silica. We also have a South Australian Asbestos and Silica Action Plan Strategic Group, which is another ministerial committee under Safe Work SA. And then under that, there's a working group, which includes a lot of government departments. So you've actually got 3 committees in South Australia, all looking at silica, things they can do to prevent silicosis in our workforces, and things we can do to support businesses getting through this new regulation, which, you know, came out to everyone in September. And people are struggling with lots of aspects of it, including, you know, finding the training, you know, to train your workers. Now it's very specific required training. From our point of view, if there's anything we can do to help you, we have WHS specialists in return to work that can come out and help you write that risk control plan. We have an expert on dust prevention and suppression before it gets into the air, and that can be helped. You can be helped with that as well.
Question for you, Shirley.
Yes.
Training. Is South Australia using the national silica awareness package, or they don't have a package down here?
So the training that's required in the regulations in South Australia under 529B is RTO training.
Okay.
The only RTO in South Australia who provides that training is CITC. We're working with Safe Work SA at the moment to enliven the other aspect of the regulation, which is that Safe Work can approve training. So I believe Master Builders Association and a few other organisations, including Macquash, are looking at more options for people on training than just CITC, because they run a 12-person course once every now and again, and it's probably not catering to all of the industries brought up in the regulations. So definitely for us, we want a very mining specific course, very similar to the awareness training that we've done for 30 years. And so we'll be working hard on that in the next 6 months to make that available to our quarry sites, preferably at no cost. So that is something that is in frame.
So I am hearing that because in the ACT, they have their national accredited one for silica awareness for the workers to go out there. It's delivered by quite a few organisations. It is different RTOs can do it. I don't understand why it can't go to other groups and share it out there. So
there is a problem with putting RTO in the regulations.
okay.
Leo's got a question.
Ryan's actually a question. Will the lung screening still apply to workers who had potential previous exposure to CSS
So it's
in the past roles?
Yeah, in past roles. Yeah. So anyone who's been exposed for more than 5 years in their career.
Yeah.
So if you used to work with Engineered Stone and now you're a car salesman, we will still screen you for the rest of your life or until doctors say you don't need screening.
And the screening is the one with the dye as well for the CT scan, or is it the non-extra one where you have to have the contrast?
No,
just
no,
knowing
it's,
this.
it's an HRCT.
Okay, so it's not with
High
the.
resolution. That's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, so no. So no, some of the lung function and screening tests, which I just had yesterday, is that to get the lungs, they may have to put the dye in there, heavy metal dye, to get the higher contrast, but I know you have the other style.
Yeah, we've got low dose,
Good.
high contrast, and
That's good.
we've managed to get a couple of good radiologists who are doing that work for us.
Good, so it's less invasive. Oh, well, so it's less invasive. Cool.
Are there any other questions that
No, just so.
I can say that's great for South Australia, really proactive, as I'm not seeing that in other states and territories, which is good. I'll find out more about New South Wales in a week when they're for the cement and concrete areas. But I would take advantage personally of what Coach can do for me as a business, because it's going to help you and your workers down the track. So all this information is going to be available to you. It's all come from the new legislation, the Safe Work Australia working with crystalline substances guideline for PCBUs.
So we do have another question.
from where?
From William. So do you think the regulator will expect to see the CSS control plans, or can you incorporate the controls into existing risk assessments processes?
So he's asked about the safe work method statement. So if you're a construction business,
Yeah.
your safe work method statement is your risk control plan.
Yeah.
If you're not a construction business and don't routinely do safe work method statements, you have to basically have a separate risk control plan. I think that's the way.
Facility control plan,
Yeah, that's the way the reg's written.
Okay.
Yeah, because swims, if they're used and done correctly, they're for all high-risk construction work, and silica fits under a high-risk controllable work because it's a high-risk substance that you could be exposed to. So it's in that part of it for swim. It's not the confined space, it's not the working nights, it's the exposure to that. But if you don't have it, you need to have done a risk assessment as part of your silica control plan and have that available.
Okay, so that's what we're looking at. We're looking at ditching the risk assessment because we've got the swim, we're doing
Yeah.
the monitoring, so therefore we don't need to have the risk assessment because we are running the swim
Your
structures.
swim's identified it and it's done the due diligence, you've captured everything you need to do and you put your controls in there, the swim's perfectly fine.
As long as it covers everything that's in that reg.
All those 7 points, how you've gathered it, you've done the type, the frequency, duration.
Yes.
Are you doing any extra
Yes.
ongoing monitoring?
Yeah.
Are you doing health? As long as it's in there, you can put it on your swim and have it as a one process.
Yeah.
Don't overcomplicate it by having multiple different sorts of information out there because you're going to forget about one.
So we have the swim.
Yeah.
And then related to that question, we've also dropped it in the risk assessment for what we're going to be doing. So our major risk assessment.
Yeah.
Will have the silica.
Yeah, so your overarching risk register, risk.
Overarching risk, yep. And then we have the swim to back up.
Perfect.
So the risk control plan template, someone's just said in the chat, there's one in Safe Work New South Wales put out, which might be a slightly different format to the one in the national guidance,
Yeah.
but they say that one's a particularly nice template.
Yeah, it is easy to use.
Yeah.
We've also built one as well off another.
Yeah.
We've actually got a risk assessment.
And with any of these things, don't reinvent the wheel. Use what's out there.
No.
Use New South Wales. Use another state. Use, if you're good friends with Boral or the other people, have a chat to them. They might be able to share how they do it to make it easy to work, because we're all about protecting worker health as a business. If we can do it together, we're going to save time, money, and effort, and we're going to protect our workers. Don't reinvent the wheel.
Our main problem at the moment is we don't have friends that share this information. Because they don't have it.
You can reach out to Cindy, and I'll say again, I'm a very, very poor business consultant. Which I told people here, I'm quite happy to help people who want helping, give you the information. Usually, unless you want me to do a deep in depth, then I'll charge for that. But if it's what can we do here, here's some templates, send it through that it's commonly used. I'd rather help you to do it, because it's better to invest your time, money, and effort on controlling your hazards, protecting your workers, than doing the other stage.
Yep.
So, yes, but we all want to share. So reach out to anybody from the AIH. They all like to talk and like to help too. So we're all pretty friendly. So don't have to attack the other business if they don't want to share.
Well, this is new. This is it's new for the. Well, what were you saying then? Paul?
Yeah.
It's new to this whole process is new.
Yes.
And when we go to share information with ask for information, partners, they haven't been there yet.
Yeah. Be aware there's stuff that's commercial and confidence that they can't share.
Oh yeah. No.
But yes, as I said earlier, if you've got any questions, keep dropping them in the chat, or ask, or if you think about something down the track, send it through to Cindy or South Australia Business Chambers, who we do thank for putting this on to try and help you understand the processes going forward and what you need to do. And I'm more than happy once I get all those questions to provide feedback. And if there's any questions that come across that I've watched Shelley, I'll reach out to Shelley, and Shelley might be able to help you, which I'm hoping she gets lots of questions.
Yeah.
Help us in South Australia.
LaPoche at rtwsa.com.
Notice you can give out your personal email address.
Yeah.
So it's all on our website, LaPoche at sa.com.au.
So do we have any more questions from anybody online? If you don't like to type, you can also just unmute and chat.
Yeah, is there a position on the halving the standard? Is there been any updates in that space at all?
That's still being worked through with Safe Work Australia and the groups on that. I do get involved with that at time to time. I have my opinion, which has nothing to do with theirs, so how that would be feasible. I'd rather see it, we know that at low dosage we need to protect people. Let's put the controls in. It's going to be very difficult from a business to manage your exposure at half the exposure if it drops to 0.05. There's good business practices, moment at 0.05 milligrams per cubic meter. When you're at half of that is when you want to see how well your controls are working, use it as an action limit. Most of our equipment nowadays can only read to about 0.02. So it's very hard to read, and you're almost at the exposure standard. So it's being looked at, it's being discussed. There is nothing formal or changes yet, but that may change with the workplace exposure limits coming through next year. It's a wait and see, unfortunately, Paul.
Thank you.
Tony's just asked if anyone has any contacts for personal monitoring equipment hire.
I can tell you one's in New South Wales and ACT, but I don't know about South Australia.
So personal monitoring, we would expect people not necessarily to be hiring equipment, but if they haven't done it before, to have a professional occupational hygienist come to your site and do that work. To look up the occupational hygienist in South Australia, you go to the AIOH website, type in consultant search, put in South Australia and dust, and you will get HSE, WSP, Helia, and a couple of independent consultants basically who will do that work for you. If you carefully watch what they do, then yes, maybe later on down the track, hiring equipment and doing it yourself could be an option, but definitely if you need to provide evidence to the regulator, you're going to need a certified occupational hygienist doing your measurement first up.
Yeah.
Is that a reasonable?
Yes, and that's what we're doing. We're
Yeah.
doing ours as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as Sally said, make sure you get a competent certified occupational hygienist to do that initial assessment, to review your controls, review what you have, so that way you know where you stand. Than someone who's done dust monitoring twice in their life, because they may not give you the information you want, and you think you're protecting your workers, and you may not be. That's right.
Thank you.
That's right. All right, so if there's no more questions, again, I told you to put them, think about them, send an email through to Cindy and she'll pass them on. Hopefully we can help you. Hopefully you gain something from this presentation. Where, yes, I'm not going to do a silica awareness course, which I do run in ACT in New South Wales, but it's providing you the overview of, yes, this is what crystalline silica substance is, this is why we need to care, these are the health impacts, this is why we need to either determine if it's more than 1%, or we're just going to assume it is, and we need to meet the new legislative requirements of doing extra for anything that's determined as a high-risk process. But going forward, we've got options to help you determine if it's medium low, what that looks like for your business to maintain and ongoing works. As I said to start with, there's going to be a survey feedback. So this will be provided in the notes. This will be provided in, you can take a screenshot of it or a photo. Cindy did tell me it goes to a SurveyMonkey questionnaire. I haven't done it myself, but I know it does take you to a SurveyMonkey question. So provide feedback there. It may come up, they want to know more information and you want to know something specific. We can go from there forward. But other than that, thank you very much for your time. Hopefully this was helpful and enjoy the rest of your day.